Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knowledge Graph Technology Showcase. This is a time-honored tradition that we do every December, and I've done over 50 of these. So if you don't see the vendor or the tool that you're looking for, make sure you check the playlist that I have linked down below. All right, and these are not promotional. I get no swag, I get no benefits from these vendors, I get no money from doing these. I do these so that I can get a feel for what's out there in the market because a lot of people ask me for my tool recommendations, but I also do it so that I can share my honest notes with you, and those are always at the end of the video. So make sure you check that out before you leave the video. All right, so today we're going to be looking at, yeah, that one. That's who we're going to be checking out today. So without further ado, let's go get started.
Hey everyone, we are here with Brian, and he might look a little familiar to you, and that is because we did review parts of Flurees last year. But this is one of those ones that has a whole bunch of different things that you might want to think about, that you might be exploring with. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is some other additional functionality. So if you missed it, make sure you check out down below. I'll stick it up here on the screen somewhere so you can see that we have a different video. You want to go and start out with that one, kind of see all the other knowledge graph stuff they do. But today we're going to talk about a little bit more of that chat and analytical space. So without further ado, Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, thanks, Ashley. Thanks for having me again. I'm Brian Platt. I am co-founder and CEO of Flurees. I'm a technical co-founder, so I get really excited and really into the product. I'll tell you really briefly, for those who aren't familiar with Flurees, what we do as a company. Our foundation and what we're really passionate about is knowledge graphs, RDF-based knowledge graphs. And we kind of have technology below the graph, at least in my mental model, which is how do we automatically get data into the graph very easily? We're not going to really talk about that today, although we'd be happy to come back. We do that for structured and unstructured content. And then on the top end of the knowledge graph is how do we allow business users to consume the knowledge and actually get the insights that the technology is there to deliver.
Without needing a PhD, right? Or be an ontologist or a data scientist.
Well, great. So let's jump in. So I want to start out by introducing this interface. This is an interface that we would see a typical business user use, and with some data knowledge that they could also get in and explore and figure out what it is they need to understand about the data or modify or tweak some settings.
Now,
all of this.
Yeah, before you go too much farther, this looks a whole lot like a chat interface, which I know you're going to be chatting, so that makes sense. But is this like doing some MCP stuff? Is it like an app within OpenAI, or is this like your app? And a lot of the chat apps look the same. So is that sort of what is it?
Yeah, so this is Flurees app. However, everything I'm going to show you is exposed via MCP tools and or APIs. So we have customers that try to embed this type of interface into their own applications using us in the back end. This is an example where we've really tied everything together for people to allow them to do things out of the box with this. So you can go either way. So I'll start off with a place that should be pretty familiar for folks, at least on this call, which is the knowledge graph itself. So I have a couple knowledge graphs. They're organized into teams here. I have a finance with an ordered cash knowledge graph, and this one I'm looking at here is actually a hardware supply chain based knowledge graph. And what I see at this initial view is a set of classes, how they're connected to each other, and then certainly properties and different statistics coming in about this class. So if you're someone who's into knowledge graphs, this will be pretty familiar. A couple things I want to just reinforce about Flurees. We are an immutable database. We have version control. It's a lot like Git. And here we only have a couple versions of the data, but every version is instantly available to you. So if I wanted to jump in and actually see some of the data, for example, here's product related information, and I can see information about the classes, or I could actually jump right into the properties. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the statistics and intelligence that Flurees is generating behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm going to talk about it is that the more information we can give about the data to an LLM automatically, without the user having to do a lot of things, the better it's going to be able to do to generate some of the analytics and insights, which we're going to jump into in a minute. We don't have any access policy. We won't sort of get into that today, but I will point out that we're able to, in the background, without even being told anything about the data or ontology, figure out what properties are identifiers, what things are being used for categories, and this is all additional insights that are going to help explain these things to the LLM and the agent. And as I get into here and start exploring the data, just to point out that as we're running things, we're actually running this as I'm the owner of this knowledge graph here, so I can do anything, but it's actually getting run under the identity of the user using the access policies. And again, this is important because when I'm asking the LLM to do things like create a dashboard for me, it's actually going to be querying these knowledge graphs as me. And if I don't have access to certain data, it doesn't matter what the LLM asks for.
Sure.
It will never see it. I'm going to jump into what we call a conversation here. So we have two ways of exposing the knowledge graph data that we're looking at. One is through conversation. So this is going to be your chat kind of based interaction. And then the other is through what we call agents. And agents can be scheduled. They can do things while you're sleeping, etc. And we're just going to focus in on the conversation. Now, our conversational capability here enable anyone in a team. So here we have a finance team, a commons team, to be able to comment and interact. And in this case, the AI is really just another member of your team. So if we ask, and I asked it up above, but we'll just so you can see it working, I could say, Flurry, what is our worst performing product? We're going to see here, based on how this conversation is configured, it has access to all the knowledge graphs within that team. And it's going to go ahead and try to understand the knowledge that it has available to it. And it's going to start, actually performing queries.
I like that you've made sure that it does the explainability outright. I know other tools, you have to then follow up if you want to know why it did what it did, what it's consulting, but I think you're doing it up front, which, if you're a typical business user, you might not want, but at the same time, I think that's a great policy to have. Hey, if you're running this, you need to make sure how it's working.
Yeah, and we actually, as we go through and we build a couple things here, we're going to see that we're actually using queries. So the AI is not really using the data that's the result of the queries in permanent artifacts. It's going to end up building us things here, but those things are going to hit the database live. So they don't actually exist in the artifacts. But this is just a good example here of just starting to combine your internal knowledge, where here I'm asking, it understood the knowledge graph, it understood the properties it had to look for what does it mean to have a bad performing product. And it's come up and basically identified my worst performing product here, which is this network attached storage device. And what's nice here is that I can just say, is that we can just loop this in with all kinds of different tools that you can make available to the agent. And here you see that it actually has my enterprise knowledge. Now it's going out and doing searches on the web dynamically for similar products to what it's been able to find internally. And it's going to be able to come back and actually tell me, what competitors are, as of this exact moment, selling, these products for. Current market data coming back in real time.
And so a question that I would have is, so as a user who is engaging with this, and you have your knowledge graphs, and if you have access to those, you can go in and it's kind of cross querying, I'm assuming, right? It's cross querying across those to figure out what things are going to help address the prompt that has just been added. Is there any fine tuning that a customer can do? Like maybe the AI continues to pick the wrong graph. Is there anything that you can do to help steer it in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our agents and all the conversations, we can actually incorporate sort of what we would call memory into it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're basically asking about, say, financial calculations, because this is a common one, people, there's things like accounts receivable, but there's more than one way to get to the data, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there may be a specific way that you want it to get to the data and avoid it doing the other way, for example. So
Mm-hmm.
these are all things that can be incorporated into the memory of the agent or the conversation that you're looking
Mm-hmm.
for.
So, and then you can, because it looks like you have some saved prompts over there. So you would be able to save that. And then every time that you want to bring that back up, let's say for the same report over and over again, it would then keep that memory so you can keep it in the right vein that you're trying to ask. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay.
And lots of times, if there's things you want to get back to again and again, what you'll typically do is what I've done here, which is say, hey, I want to create a dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
What's really important about these dashboards is different than what I've seen anyone else do, is that these dashboards are actually created and queried for dynamically. So the
Mm-hmm.
dashboard has no static data in it.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'll go ahead and pop this out. So as I'm looking at this dashboard I asked it to create, it's dynamically querying the knowledge graph. In fact, here I have Flurees time travel, and I have the ability to get back to any previous moment in time
Mm-hmm.
for the state of my data for it. And then the other trick, I don't know if you saw on the prompt, I said, hey, I also want this dashboard to be editable. Now, there's certain types of data that it's okay to be editable. Certain types of data you probably don't want to be editable depending on where it's being
Yeah.
managed. But we have the ability to not only have these dashboards be created dynamically, but if I wanted to change the price of this to $5,000, I can actually do that in real time. And now I have these versions, a new version of the database. And again, we have that traceability
Mm-hmm.
that's always built into the system that I know
And
exactly where and how it was changed.
yeah, and you would not be able to do that if you didn't have the permissions to do so, right? So
That's
this
right.
so this is streaming. What if you what kind of checks and balances do you have on that? Because, if somebody sets up a dashboard and you want it to be, updating live and maybe it's using stock data because it looks like you can grab stuff from the web, that can get costly. So is there a way to kind of monitor or suggest when someone's wanting to do something? Because we've all been there. I want a dashboard. Cool. How often do you need it to be updated? It needs to be real time. They always say that. Does it actually need to be?
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, this gets into, and I'll see if these come up correctly. Oh, yeah, so they are. So I'm running on a local environment, but we have very detailed billing metrics that you can get into for LLM tokens, but also in this particular case, which is, I'll point out another unique thing about Flurry and our architecture, I'm actually running everything you see here without a single server. This is 100% Lambdas, 100% invoked on demand,
Mm-hmm.
meaning
Mm-hmm.
there's zero infrastructure costs unless I'm actively using the product.
Okay.
So yeah, we get all kinds of statistics that
Okay.
allow you to get into who's using what, where's the dollars coming from, et cetera,
Yeah.
for when that's a concern of yours.
So sometimes you'll notice when you're putting a dashboard together or you're even sending a query in like you were doing earlier in the chat and the data is funky and you'll say, well, wait, it must be something with my model or something with the data. So if that happens, what is the normal procedure for folks that are using this? Do they then, because this is usually business folks, right? So is it then they send a notice to their Flurry admin or like is there any way that if I am as a role of ontologist or whatever I am at my organization where I am allowed to go in and update things in the actual ontology. So I see you're updating the dashboards and the data itself is updating, but what if you see something that needs to be updated with the graph?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess the best way to answer it is whoever controls that source of knowledge needs to know about that. But when I started out the conversation here, I said that our main historical products were how do we create golden records and normalize data into graphs. So that's a really great conversation for us to be able to have, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
information that's not coming across correctly from a
Mm-hmm.
relational database, and you want to use our Flurry Sense product, which is going
Mm-hmm.
to automatically help normalize that into a graph, do entity resolution, and create golden records for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And builds machine learning models that actually do that on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of great technology that can actually automate a lot of that and make that very efficient, converting that data into a graph. If you're not using one of those, then you're going to be using some other tools or techniques. You might have a data lake or a data warehouse
Mm-hmm.
data is originating from, but whoever owns that is ultimately going to
Yeah.
have to make
Okay.
those fixes.
And that's what I would expect.
Actually, yeah, like in this case, the data model is right inside of this data. I can actually have it create a dashboard of the data model, make it editable. I can
Mm-hmm.
actually
Mm-hmm.
create edits right in here the same
Mm-hmm.
way I created that dashboard from the
Yeah, because
data
you have to read
itself.
and write in here. I think that opens up those possibilities with with the proper precautions.
That's right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah, so those are just a few of the things we wanted to show you. The only other thing that I mentioned that we have the ability to do is this ability to create agents. Agents can have access to the knowledge resources that you want to have access to, and that's either, a basically Flurry technology managed knowledge graph.
Mm-hmm.
Flurry now supports over 300 SaaS integrations, so this could be your Salesforce data
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And we also support things like iceberg tables. So this could be
Mm-hmm.
coming directly out of your data lake or warehouses. But what are the knowledge sources that you want the agent to have access to?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you want it to be able to create dashboards? And we have a couple kinds of those. And then what are the tools? And we've seen some of these queries, web searches, but we also have the ability, and there's some account setup that a customer has to do, but you can integrate this directly with Google Calendar, Google
Mm-hmm.
Mail, and you can then schedule an agent such that, for example, every Monday at 9 a.m., look at my calendar for the week, find everyone I'm meeting with, go into the CRM data,
Mm-hmm.
find all of those companies in the CRM, search the web for the latest news in each of those companies, and tell me how I can make the biggest impact for the rest
That's
of the week.
nice.
Have that in a dashboard waiting for me Monday morning.
Right. Well, and with that, like there's no special knowledge graph aspect to that unless you want it to ground or you want it to consult certain types of data that you have. So in that setup that you just described, what do you see people using the knowledge graph for in that setup the most?
Well, the knowledge graph is where we create really that semantic layer that allows the LLM to do a really great job, especially when connecting information across sources.
Okay, so that's
So,
where it is. It's cross. Okay.
yep, cross sources, linking entities, and
Mm-hmm.
basically bringing it together in a common model.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, the ability for it to work across these sources, it's hampered
Yeah.
significantly.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Okay.
mean you won't get results, but you start to become pretty limited in what you can do.
Yeah, so like I would even expect like from the use case that you just walked through, okay, here are the clients that I'm going to be looking at. It's in my Google Calendar. Chances are in your Google Calendar, you don't have a customer ID in those. So there's probably some other data source you have to go to get a customer ID to then disambiguate which company that you're actually looking for. So yeah, I can see where some of that stuff shows up.